In the month of Bhadrapada, on Chaturthi, Ganapati's energy is coming closest to the earth. It is literally about allowing the sun's rays to enter just by opening the window. Parents of the world, Shiva and Parvati. Ganapati is born to them, but when they came together, they also worshipped Ganapati at their own wedding. How is it that they worship their own child who was not yet born? There itself, the story is hinting it's...
I'm a little blanked out. They say if you believe long and faithfully enough, then God will build you back up in front of the people He broke you down with.
Yeah. A devotee of Ganesha by name Moria Goswami devoted his life to Ganesha. Ganesha says, I'm so moved by you that I will be born in your house for 7 generations. Upasana will leave a stamp for you and the whole world to see, saying, you all questioned, you all wondered, ये थोड़ा पागल है क्या? Divinity will show them when Divinity has to show them. Ganapati does that. He has big ears, he's always listening. So, Ganapati is not only Vighna Harta, he also creates obstacles where they are necessary. What is the biggest obstacle? Time. Who is responsible for that? That is Vighna Raja. He is the ruler of time. I'm worshipping the one who is responsible for all the times in my life that are about to come.
Poetry, man.
Shiva and Shakti that you see as 2 separate identities, 2 separate entities. In Ganesha, the body is given by her, the head is given by him. So there is Parvati and Shiva here, so he is Ardhanarishvara. So worshipping Ganapati is equivalent to worshipping both of them together.
There's so much real energy in this particular episode.
I'm looking at it, I'm seeing it behind you, and it doesn't happen often because that's the thing about Ganapati, no? He just appears like that.
Wish everybody a very heartfelt Ganesh Chaturthi. We're starting it off with this chat with Mr. Varanasi who returns to the Ranveer Show. How are you, Vinay?
I'm lovely and thank you for having me back. And especially when the mood is so set for celebrating, I think, the world's favorite Ganapati.
The world's favorite.
Yeah.
Why world?
Something about him, I think, that's so magnetic that it's caught the attention, one, of seekers, in the most strict sense of the word. People who are on their spiritual journey recognizing that. But also the way Ganapati has caught the attention of artists across religious beliefs, right? I mean, he lends himself to anything. And you can play with that form, you can engage with it. And there is something, I think, that the country and beyond has understood about him, because you see that, of course, if you come to Maharashtra leading to Ganesh Chaturthi, you will see the iconography, the creativity, the display of how Ganesha is amenable and he's moldable to whatever his devotees want him to do. So I think that makes him the world's favorite, really.
Good point to begin with a mantra along with an explanation.
Sure.
Because I think in my eyes, this is going to be one of the ultimate podcasts when it comes to the subject of Ganesh. So, whenever you're ready.
So there are multiple stotras, multiple shlokas for Ganesha. And I think each one has its own place. Each is special. There's one that is coming to me right now, which is a memory from my own childhood when we were asked as children to, after we ate our food, to read this and rub our stomachs clockwise thrice because it would aid in digestion. So the second part of the mantra is familiar to most of us. The first part is a little different. It goes like this. Vinayaka namastubhyam satatam modaka priyam nirvighnam kuru me deva sarvakaryeshu sarvada. So it says Vinayaka namastubhyam. My namaskarams to Vinayaka. Satatam modaka priyam. He is so fond of modakas. And modaks, as we know it, are his most favorite naivedya, his most favorite prasad. There's a whole lot of symbolism hidden in that. The second part of the shloka, like I said, is familiar to us because Vakratunda Mahakaya also has the same last line, that is Nirvighnam Kurume Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada. I think these kind of shlokas, they kind of summarize the idea of Ganapati. They summarize the idea that human ego falls very short in front of unexpected obstacles. it necessarily has to bow down where divinity can work in mysterious ways. And I think the whole concept of Ganapati, of worshipping Ganapati, somewhere necessarily must strike at our ego saying, God, I don't know what can come in my way, but you do. You have that infinite, magnanimous knowledge. Infinite knowledge, but also magnanimous generosity to know what is good for me and what's not. So if there are things that are about to block my growth in any sphere of my life, spiritual, professional, personal, whatever it is, by virtue of your grace, remove it. And I think that's a very beautiful prayer to Ganapati. That's why I think we were taught as kids to first do namaskaram to him, because that acknowledgement that there is a power in this universe that is constantly supporting us. It is watching out for our welfare. And constant gratitude to that power helps us maintain a link with it. So I think that idea of Ganapati is what I personally love, that you can't fake it when you bow down to a power and you say, there may be things I cannot foresee which are going to come up on this journey. Please give me the strength to go through that. I think that's something I absolutely love about him. And it comes out in all his shlokas. Some deeper ideas are hidden around the idea of modaks, but we'll talk about that in a little while. So,
I think this is one of those topics where we have to build it up.
yes.
I'm pretty sure that there's going to be a lot of NRIs watching this who want to educate their children, like the next generation, on this subject as
Yeah.
well. Which is why I would love to begin with the Katha.
Sure.
Do we begin with Shivji and Parvati Ma?
Absolutely. The parents of Ganesha. So, when we look at the emergence of any devata, when we look at the stories connected with them, what always is interesting to observe is how there is such interconnectedness. So, it's hardly ever one story with just one character and a magical appearance. They're always interlinked to multiple elements, multiple, I will not say characters, but multiple other such forces. And the story is a combination of all this. Because, and I just want to, do this priming before we launch into the story, that when we look into any story of how a devata emerged, the idea that rishis are trying to convey to us, the rishis who documented these stories, is not about an emergence that happened long, long ago and we are simply remembering it. It is about an emergence that can happen at any moment inside the sheath of this body. And for that to happen, there needs to be a recognition and an awareness of what's happening. So these stories are talking about how divinity manifests within the body, within the realm of the body. When it is happening, there is a whole lot of grace that makes it happen. How does that grace come and support the expression of divinity? I think that's the scaffolding I'd like to build before we kind of get into the story of Ganesha. Because when we look at any form of divinity, typically what happens is divinity is somewhere a little out of reach for us. Because no matter how much we try to build in the idea of love, which is a very, very simple but a very profound thing to do, there is a distance because we realize it's God. So there is some fear. Because there's an element of unknown. So what makes divinity accessible? Divinity only becomes accessible to us when divinity becomes childlike. And that is why if you see in Sanatan Dharma, every school of thought, every sub-school of thought within this system has a form of that deity in a child form. So for example, Vishnu, eternally in his realm beyond the 14 worlds, out of access for even devatas, forget human beings. How does one attempt to reach such a Vishnu? That same Vishnu becomes a small little Krishna and comes crawling into our hearts. When there's Krishna, there's no intimidation. There's no fear of, how do I? So automatically a link is established. So in the school of Vaishnava, a baby Vishnu is Balakrishna. In the school of Shakta, of Shakti, where the divine feminine is worshipped and is eulogized, how do we connect with her? I'm not saying one cannot establish a connect. There are Mahans who have established connects with so many forms of the goddess. But for the goddess to become accessible, she becomes the form of Bala Tripura Sundari. So Balakrishna, Bala Tripura Sundari. Now if you see this in Shaiva, in the school of worshipping Shiva as Paramatma, you see forms like Batuk Bhairav, which is a young form of Shiva as Bhairav specifically. But you also see two distinct forms, not of Shiva himself as a baby, but his two sons as babies. One is Bala Ganesha, the second is Bala Subramanya or Bala Kartikeya. Both of these forms have their own kathas, but they make Shiva and his entire family accessible to us. Just like how Krishna does that and makes Vishnu Tattvam accessible to us. So Ganapati's appearance itself, Subramanya or Kartikeya's appearance itself is the link to unravel the mysteries of how to connect with God. Because with children, there's no fear. And that also ties into what we were talking about earlier, about the idea that you can play with Ganapati. You can dress him up how you'd like. You can paint him how you'd like. You can engage with him in whatever way speaks to your heart because he's a child. And this child, when he first appeared to his parents, so the parents of the world, Parameshwara and Parvati, Shiva and Parvati. If you're in the Vaishnava school of thought, it's Vishnu and Lakshmi. These are forms, but the ideology is remaining the same. These are the parents of the universe. Now, the parents of the universe, Ganapati is born to them as their child. This is the statement we all somewhere are familiar with, that they have two children. One of them is Ganapati, the other is Kartikeya. But Puranic stories are never so linear, because if Ganesha is born to them as their child, it makes sense till the point that we read stories pertaining to their wedding. That is when Shiva and Shakti came together, when Shiva and Parvati came together. When they came together, they also worshipped Ganapati at their own wedding. So how is it that they worshipped their own child who was not yet born? So there itself the story is hinting it's not just about a child being born to them. Puranic terminology uses these words like child, wife, etc. as a code for something else. So the idea of Ganapati is that Ganapati is the primordial sound that we call as Pranava or Om. From this Om stemmed the entire universe. Shiva and Parvati both desired that this Om should be born to them. That desire leads to a very beautiful and a very elaborate story of how he came to be. This is the most common one. What I'm going to narrate now is one amongst the multiple. There are so many of them because these stories are trying to communicate one point, that don't restrict God's appearances and believe that this is the only way in which divinity can manifest. This is one way. And in this one way, you'll see something very interesting. It's also pointing my attention to that very beautiful Vigraha over there, which we'll tie it all up in a minute.
Placed very specifically for this
episode.
Yes,
exactly. So what you see in this story is that Parvati desires to have somebody guarding her door and being her attendant, somebody who will respond to her and her needs. So out of her own skin, she takes out, some people say the multani mitti, some people say that she uses haldi, and she fashions a little boy. Now, this is coming from her. So Puranas are using this as codes, saying it's an extension of that Shakti. And by virtue of Shakti herself doing it, because Parvati is Jagannatha, she pours her own prana into it. Her own prana Shakti falls into it. Her own prana Shakti gives it life. So this little boy that she fashioned comes to life. When he comes to life, she assigns him a task and she says, be at my door and don't allow anybody to come. Now the boy is on duty. She has gone in. And meanwhile, Shiva appears. Now the boy has not been acquainted with him. So he doesn't know who he is. Shiva wants to go inside and the boy says, no, you don't have permission to go inside. My mother has said nobody is allowed. You're a part of that. There's no exceptions. So Shiva, in a moment of what seems like anger, and we can be very quick to dismiss these stories saying, oh, so Shiva gets angry. But there's a reason behind this. So Shiva gets angry and he cuts the boy's head with his Trishulam, which also interestingly is here. So I feel like all elements of your story are all finding their way here. So he cuts his head. And as soon as this news reaches inside, Parvati is furious, saying, that's my child. I created him out of my own hands. And he was killed. So now I'm going to take out that rage and kill the rest of creation. And she is appeased only when Shiva says, I will go and I will find the head of an animal that is sleeping in the northern direction. And I will place the first animal that I see, I will bring its head and I will put it here. Now this is when the story becomes very interesting, because Shiva goes to the forest and he sees an elephant head, comes and places that elephant head on this decapitated body and then pours life into it. And he gives him the special place of Agra Puja, of Prathama Puja, saying, henceforth, anybody in this world who has to attain success in whatever their endeavor is, they must first pray to you. And then not only will they not have any obstacles, they will be able to achieve their end goal. This is the idea. This is the basic story of how Ganapati's appearance happened. This is one of the many stories. This is not the only one. But look at the story. It's hinting at some strange things. Why is an elephant's head there? They could have found any animal. Shiva could have found any animal when he went to the forest. But elephant in Sanskritam is called Gaja. So he is called Gajanan, Gajamukh, etc. But something special in that form which ties into the idea of who Ganapati is. So we'll come to that in just a little while. This story of how Ganapati came to be is a rather interesting one, because if you see this story, it is when he was first created. It's only Shakti. Parvati is involved entirely in this. Shiva is not involved in that creation. Shiva's involvement only comes later when he places the head. So Shiva and Shakti that you see as two separate identities, two separate entities, in Ganesha, the body is given by her, the head is given by him. So there is Parvati and Shiva here, so he's Ardhanarishwara. So worshipping Ganapati is equivalent to worshipping both of them together. Now just flip the coin and look at his brother, Muruga, Kartikeya, Subramanya, whatever name you call him by. He has 6 heads. He's called Shanmukha. Shiva technically has 5 heads. Each of them have a different name. They are associated with different concepts. Parvati has 1. 5 plus 1, 6. 6 heads you worship together. You worship that 6-headed boy. It's equivalent to worshipping his parents together. So the idea that both their parents' energy is entirely contained in them is represented both in Ganesha and in Kartikeya. You have stories that build onto this and explore this philosophy of Ganesha more. But one version claims that the event of his getting the head from Shiva and then Shiva merging it happened on the day of Bhadrapada Shukla Chaturthi. That is in the month of Bhadrapada, the 4th day before Purnima. On that day is when he received this blessing, and that is why we celebrate Ganesh Chaturthi, which is what all of this is about. Other versions say, no, that happened in the month of Magha. That is when Maharashtra celebrates Ganesh Jayanti then, actually. The rest of the country, I mean, it's not that Maharashtra does not celebrate this, but they count that as Ganesh Jayanti, but this as Ganesh Chaturthi. But something very special about that number 4 and Ganapati's association with it. Because everything about him is 4. When he was created, he had 4 hands. He is worshipped on Chaturthi. Further, to attain Ganapati's special blessings, his mantra has to be only read 4,44,000 times. 4,44,444 is what they say. So the Ganapati Sahasranama says, Chatur Laksha Japasupritaha, the one who is satisfied by 4 lakh japas. So something special about 4 and Ganapati, indicating his connection not only to the number, but the way he runs the universe with 4. I'll talk about that in some time. I think you have a question.
No, please go on.
Okay.
Poetry, man.
4, you see, every Devata has a number that you can, if you just tap into what that number means, you will see how beautifully they sum up the entire cosmic arrangement, not just outside, but even within this world, within the body. Everything in this body largely is about multiples of 3 or multiples of 3. 3 states of awakening. That is Jagrat, which is being awake. Swapna, which is sleep with dreams. Sushupti, which is deep sleep. So these are 3. Then you have the 3 bodies. The external body, that is made out of the 5 elements. You have the subtle body called the Sukshma Sharira. And within that, you have, I don't think English gives the perfect translation to it, but you have something called the Karana Sharira. Karana Sharira has been translated as astral body in some cases, but I personally don't agree, but that's a different discussion. These are also 3. What you're seeing is the physical body. Below that is the subtle body, the Sukshma Sharira. So Sthula, Sukshma, Karana. 3 bodies. 3 states of time. Past, present and future. Bhuta, Bhavishya, Vartamana. All of these are 3. Now, all of these 3 are being regulated and are working because there is some operative force. There is some operative force that is making sure everything is sticking to its respective axis. That is called the 4th. And that is called the 4th principle, which in the philosophy of yoga is called as Turiya. It is beyond the axis of the 3, but it is empowering the 3. It is sending its own energy into the 3.
It's like the soil for the plant of the 3.
Absolutely. It's the soil for the plant of the 3. Ganesha is that. Ganesha has been seen as that because, like I mentioned earlier, he is that primordial Omkara from where everything came. So Omkara also has three parts. A, U, Ma.
Which is why they say Om chanting also connects you to Turiya.
Yes, same. Because Ganapati's form is Turiya. So the number 4 is indicative of his eternal residence and his eternal accessibility only beyond the realms. We have to see beyond to be able to access him. But how do you do that? By constantly reinforcing the power of 4. Saying, okay, he is the fourth principle called Turiya. How do you worship him? Worship him on the fourth day, Chaturthi. That is why any Chaturthi that comes is sacred to Ganesha. What we are celebrating now as Ganesh Chaturthi is one of the 24 Chaturthis that comes in the year. This is one of the most significant. But to do Ganesha Aradhana, Chaturthi anyway is important. This particular one is extremely important. And within Chaturthis, you have two kinds of Chaturthis. One is the Chaturthis that come before Purnima. The second is the Chaturthis that come before Amavasya. Now, Ganapati Aradhana helps with two things. One is, first and most direct effect that we need is removing our difficulties, just taking us out of whatever we're struggling with. So, Kashta Nivarana. Second is blessing us. One is getting us out of a difficulty. Second is moving us from this into a more exalted state, into a superior realm. So, the first one, which is called Kashtaharana, this is when we worship him on the day called Sankashtahara Chaturthi, which every month, every lunar month before Amavasya, the Chaturthi that comes, those in difficulties will do all those 12 Chaturthis. Amongst them, one is a main one that comes in the month of Magha. Those who are seeking special blessings of Ganesha will do all the 12 Chaturthis that come before Purnima. Amongst them, amongst the 12 ones that come, the most important one is this. So whether you can do the other 11, cannot do the other 11 in whatever capacity you can and cannot do, doing this one, that is in the month of Bhadrapada on Chaturthi, this is supposed to be the most sacred day to him. See, when we talk about festivals, be it Janmashtami, be it Navaratri, Ganesh Chaturthi, what is happening on this day? That particular energy, that Devata's energy is coming closest to the earth. In the human body, it's coming closest to accessibility. So it is literally about allowing the sun's rays to enter just by opening the window. On that day, you should open the window. Whether you do it on other days or not will have its effect. If you're constantly doing it, that day's experience will be different for you. Even if you do it in a lesser capacity on other days, but you do it on that day without fail, you'll feel something. Because he comes straight in.
Do you want to say anything about this phase of festivals that happens at this time every year?
Ah, nice.
Why does this phase happen together? Are all the deities closer to earth right from August till Diwali pretty much?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And such an interesting question, no? Because when you start seeing the year is split into two ayanas. The first is Uttarayan. Uttarayan is the apparent northward migration of the sun, and then the apparent southward migration. So days become longer, shorter, etc. based on these two things. A majority of our festivals come in Dakshinayan. Once Ashadi comes, in Maharashtra, Ashadi is equal to Ashadi Ekadashi. Once that sets in, over here, in Dakshinayanam you have Guru Purnima, and Shravan begins. Once Shravan comes, you have a host of worship. So you have Shiva Radhana that happens, especially in the northern parts of the country. Shiva Radhana is sacred during Shravan. You have festival after festival that comes from Shravan, Bhadrapada, Ashvija, all of them. Like you said, Janmashtami, Ganesh Chaturthi, Anant Chaturdashi, Navaratri, Diwali, in between host of regional festivals as well. The idea is at this time, two things happen. One is environmentally. If you look outside, it's a period of change, right? Once the rains come in, host of diseases also come, waterborne diseases, etc. So at this time, to be spiritually, physically and mentally healthy, sadhana was recommended. This is one aspect of it. Second thing is, during Dakshinayana, the energies for group celebrations increase. Uttarayana, if you observe, which largely or roughly will correspond between January to July, during that time, that time is more beneficial for internal sadhana individually. That is why our congregating festivals are more now. Because the collective energy, the community consciousness that we know, that we call it as, that rises in this time. So that is why if you see Jan to June belt, it looks like a dry belt. It's a dry belt for festival celebrations maybe, It's not a dry belt for sadhana. Sadhana changes its appearance at that time. At this time, it changes its appearance. That's why if you see particularly, and of course, we also have Bal Gangadhar Tilak to thank for the community celebrations of Ganesh Chaturthi. But the idea of coming together and worshipping is a very profound one. And somewhere that is, it's present, but its essence is not being understood. The idea is not just to come together, have a good time, eat at a stall and go back. The idea is when, there is divinity manifesting there. If that divinity, where is it manifesting from? Question number one. If we look at the festival of Ganesh Chaturthi, what is happening? Traditionally, what happens is sit together, or an individual sits, takes mud from the water banks, ideally from a river or a pond, take that mud, sculpt a vigraham, a murti out of it. And what do? You are invoking pranam into it. You are invoking some special force into it. Where are you invoking that force from? You are not saying, may this force descend and sit in this house or sit here. You are saying, Mahaganapati prana, mama prana. My own prana I am pouring into this. This is the very beautiful concept of puja, which really talks about what's happening in a puja. You're saying this infinite life force is here. That's why this body is working. Since I'm taking infinity out of infinity, it will still remain here. It's not that if I put my prana into him, my own will go. I will not die. Because if you take infinity minus infinity is also infinity. You put it over there. The second you do that, it no longer remains an idol. It no longer remains just a murti. It has prana. The second it has prana, it's a living being. You have to take care of it. So you feed it, you engage with it, you worship it. And then at the end of it, whether you keep him for 1 day, 3 days, 5 days, etc., wherever that prana went or wherever that prana came from, I ask it to return. This idea is the idea of puja, of aradhana. And with Ganapati, this one festival, it's not that other festivals don't have it, but you see it in its fullest expression here. We have the liberty to make him. You don't have that with a lot of other festivals. If it is Deepavali, if it is Diwali, you will have, if you do Lakshmi Puja, your Lakshmi Puja will happen to a murti or to a photo. You don't make a Lakshmi necessarily for this. Some people do that, but that is an additional thing. But the texts that we have say that for Ganesh Chaturthi, the idol must be made. Why did they insist on that? Because when you worship Paramatma, the idea is this, Ranveer, that if you set a relationship with Paramatma, you can do it in 2 ways. You can keep remembering that he's God, number one. This is called as Brahma Bhava, remembering that he is Parabrahma. Second is having Putra Bhava towards Paramatma. If you build that love of remembering him as your own child, irrespective of what your gender is, you will develop maternal instincts towards him. How do you do that? Make his idol. You will feel that whatever your gender may be, make that idol, you will feel like Gauri. It happens. And it's very addictive. If you make an idol once for Ganesh Chaturthi, you will not feel like buying one from the market again.
It's also the hyper-practical way of celebrating Ganesh Chaturthi when you're abroad, when you don't have access to all of the saman you need for the pujas. So would you say just go and get some natural clay?
Absolutely.
But what about the puja process?
Okay. So since we're talking about Ganesh Chaturthi itself, which is a very special day, because so the thing about this festival is, across the country, it involves people of all ages. So in the south, there is an additional practice that on this day, 21 kinds of leaves must be offered to Ganesha. So I know as kids how much, we would, the days leading up to the festival are basically meant to forage those leaves. Oh, yahan pe to pomegranate hai, let's take pomegranate and go. Okay, yahan pe ye hai. So because those 21 things are not easily accessible. So what happens is it becomes a group activity because everybody has a different strength. Some trees are difficult to climb. So young boys will go quickly and be able to get that. Some people are more artistic. They'll be happier to make the idol. Some people are good at just, in the family are good at just arranging everything and making sure everything is there. Essentially what it does is, in some way it connects you to that activity. We have somewhere lost this notion and we believe puja is only that time that we are sitting there in front. No, puja is everything that you do leading up to that. From the time that your thoughts are going in that direction, oh, agle hafte ko Ganesh Chaturthi hai, kya karna hai mujhe? Ye karna. All that is also puja. As long as you're doing it happily. If you're doing it with stress, it doesn't count. But if you're doing it happily, everything that you do, irrespective of the complexity, irrespective of the simplicity, he'll accept it. And that's essentially Ganesha's philosophy. Because he is such a responsive God because he responds to love. And that love, you can show him by doing the simplest of pujas, you can show him by doing an elaborate puja. But the objective is, who are you showing it to, him or the world? In today's world, it's also become a lot about, the jazz and the glitz of it, saying, okay, whose Instagram Ganapati is louder, yours or mine? And then simple essences get lost. The more you personalize your puja, that's why I would recommend making a Ganapati rather than buying, let's say, a painted version of it, because we're losing the essence when we do this. We're losing the idea that we can only connect to God taking help from nature.
Is there a set of rules listed out anywhere?
Oh, yeah. For this?
Yeah.
With respect to making Ganesha?
Yes.
Absolutely. So, you will see that the overall vidhanam, the paddhati, the methodology, varies from state to state, place to place, because there are multiple texts that talk about it. But essentially, the guidelines are a few. One, keep your focus on him. So don't allow your mind to get diverted. See, the thing about rules, is that because rules were given as a set of guidelines to keep focus intact. But what happens was, or rather what has happened in the course of time is, people have forgotten the reason behind the rule and they focused on the rule alone. So when you do that, it becomes a point of stress that, I have to follow this rule. Guidelines are necessary, saying, yes, you remain clean, make sure you bathe, go find a place where you can get natural clay from, sit yourself and make that. What happens with these kind of things is, you ensure that your focus is not diverted. The rules are varying based on customs, based on regional customs, but also varying on the energy of the devata. So, for example, none of these are hard and fast rules that you must, but many of them are very beautiful customs. For example, there is one custom that says, when you're worshipping Ganesha, particularly on Ganesh Chaturthi, you should wear red, because in Kailasa, in the mountain where he lives with his parents, Gauri, his mother, is always wearing red. So if somebody is sitting in front of him and wearing red, this boy will only remember his mother and he'll look upon the worshipper as his own mother. So you're again establishing your own relationship with him. So this is not a rule and hard and fast thing that it has to be followed. But when you do it, when you are wearing red, you'll say, oh, okay, so I'm feeling like Ganesha's mother now. So your own bond comes into the question, right? These are the kind of things that were encouraged. So for example, Ganesha is most fond of durva, grass that grows on the roadside. It's not a complicated thing that you need to climb a mountain to only get in 1 month of the year. No, get it practically everywhere it rains, and it's growing haphazardly everywhere. This is all it takes. It takes literally close to nothing to make him respond. But all he requires, I think, of course, that is sans devatas. It really is across any devata. They're not asking for anything but our time. And if you give them that, the way they respond, one day, if you can devote to Ganapati with sincerity, you'll see the effects of it year round. The remaining 364 days, whether you know it or you don't know it, that energy will be backing you. Saying, no, I remember how you gave me that day. I'm with you on this day.
Time fueled by love.
Beautiful. I like that equation. Yeah, time fueled by love.
It has to be from a place of love.
Yes.
Not from a place of, oh man, I gotta give it time.
Yeah. And no fear. With him, that's the best part. See, there are many forms of Ganesha. Okay, and some forms require intense worship. So, for example, there is a form called Uchishta Ganapati. This is a Tantric Ganapati. Now, you may or may not know about it. That form has its effects. You worship this simple form of clay that you have yourself created with your own hands. If it needs to, it will take that intense form to come and protect you. That Ganesha there are 32 forms of Ganesha as per Shastra. Those 32 forms, which form is required when in my life, I won't know. Ganapati will know. But this little mound of clay will take all that because divinity has flown into it. And look at the process that we do. You make this, you worship him, and you have to dissolve him. The thing about mud idols is, any form that you worship with mud, whether it is Ganesha or Durga, you see this even in Durga Puja, you can't say, I'll reuse it next year. You can do that with silver, you can do that with gold, you can do that with brass, you can do that with other materials, you can't do it with clay. Why? People have ascribed this saying, just like how the human body comes from the soil and goes back to the soil, it's the same process. No. But our ancestors didn't say, leave the idol in the soil. They specifically said, and the Puranas and multiple texts, Dharma Shastras say, dissolve it. Why dissolution? Because this is part of a larger process. The first amongst the 5 elements is the element of earth. From earth, the objective is within the human body also these 5 elements are there. The earth element dissolves into water. This you can see in nature as well. Water is subtly present in fire. Fire is subtly present in the air. The air is subtly present in space. The idea is to dissolve one after the other. This is a yogic practice. This may or may not be possible on an internal level for everybody without the awareness. Rishi said, don't worry. You want to achieve the same effects of that. You do this external process. Create something out of mud, dissolve it in water. And then from the element of water, it will go forward into fire, into Vayu, into Akasha. Somewhere your puja is connecting the Panchabhutas.
Trying my best not to bring in any Tantra elements on this episode, but now they're here, so we're going to bring it in. So you said something very interesting about how all the stories that we hear about all these deities are interconnected.
Yeah.
And they're a representation of what's happening inside the body and the mind.
Yeah.
Okay. I have a friend of mine who I've met through the show, Shishir Kumar. He's done some incredible Bhairav podcasts with us. Something I learned from him was that every Sanatani should spend some time studying Vajrayana Buddhism. Because if you gain a deep understanding of Vajrayana Buddhism, you understand certain essences of Sanatan Dharma, which are already mentioned in the Shastras.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, most Sanatanis have not read all the Shastras and probably are not even going to read all the Shastras. Most people absorb their information in this manner.
Right.
Palgar Rinpoche, who was a Buddhist monk, he was on the show, and that's how he explained the Buddhist deities. He said that all these things, Tara, Chakra Samvara, Avlokateshwar, these are all emotions and elements inside your man.
Yes.
Inside you.
Yeah.
Your physical realm. The same is true for our deities.
Absolutely.
Would you say that Ganpati is best understood by understanding the Mooladhara Chakra? And or would you like to talk about another part of your human internal world to explain Ganpati better? Because this is leading into a larger conversation related to Ganpati Sadhana. I'd also like to mention the word, I don't know the exact pronunciation. I think it's called Ganapatya.
Ganapatya.
You'll have to begin by explaining what Ganapatya is, because people understand Shaivism, Vaishnavism, Shakt. It's not very often that Ganapatya is mentioned on podcasts.
Sure.
Over to you.
So we'll start it from there actually. When you look at Sanatana Dharma, there are 6 schools. These 6 schools have recognized 6 forms of divinity. And these 6 forms are the absolute manifestation, the highest manifestation of divinity. You stick to any one school. As you go towards that divinity will reveal itself to you, and you will ultimately be merged into that light. You will find that light within. Wording it can happen in many different ways. But the 6 schools are, when you recognize Vishnu as Paramatma, it is naturally the school of thought that you fall into will be Vaishnava. Vishnu, Vaishnava. When you recognize Shiva as Paramatma, Shaiva. So Vaishnava and Shaiva come from here. When you recognize Shakti as Paramatma Swarupini, the manifestation, the female manifestation of the divine, then the entire school of thought that you subscribe to is Shakta. Now within these there will be differences. So within Vaishnava schools, you'll have multiple Vaishnava schools, multiple Shaiva schools, multiple Shakta schools. These are 3. Most are familiar with these 3. There are 3 more. One amongst them is when you recognize Skanda, that is Muruga or Kartikeya as Parabrahma, then the school of thought that you fall under is Skanda. So Skanda worship is Skanda. Then comes worshipping Surya as Parabrahma. This particularly you will see towards the western parts of the country. That's why it is called Saurashtra. Because there is one interpretation that says Saurashtra is equal, meaning 100 states is equal. But if you look in older texts, it's Saura Rashtra, the land that is ruled by Surya, Saura. So worshipping Surya as Parabrahma makes, or the school of thought that is ascribed to that is Saura. So you have Vaishnavam, Shaivam, Shaktam, Skandam, Sauram. The 6th one in this context. They're not fixed as only A, B, C, D, E. I'm just explaining it in a random manner. In the hero of today's story is when you worship Ganapati as Parabrahma, that school of thought is called as Ganapatya.
Let's take a tiny pause.
Sure.
Explain Parabrahma as a word to every Sanatani listening to this.
Okay.
I'd also like to give one small context here.
Hmm.
I believe that the ultimate goal of every one born into a Sanatani family
Mhm.
is to escape the cycle of birth and death, which people also call the point of moksha or nirvana.
Hmm.
So if you're born in a Hindu household, you have an option of just living out your material life, going about your puja processes, being a kind person, doing good in the world. But you've also been given an opportunity to advance very ferociously along your spiritual path,
Right.
if you wish.
Yeah.
If you think that, yes, you're done with your material desires.
Sure.
Which is why you see a lot of older Sanatanis gravitating towards a spiritual
Sure.
lifestyle.
Yeah.
Fair to say?
Fair to say.
Now, keeping that as a context, I'd love for you to explain what Paramatma means.
Okay. Sure. So Paramatma, Parabrahma, Parameshwara, these are all words that talk about the ultimate source from where this universe began. This source is formless. It is Nirakara. It has no form. It is free of any attributes, Nirguna. But this force manifests and creates from that manifestation. So this world is nothing but a manifestation of divinity. So when this Nirguna Nirakara, I'm not using jargon or terminology to confuse, but just to set context that it is from one formless source that everything came. Then it takes a form. It becomes Saguna with attributes. It takes a form, Sakar. The Akara that it takes are these 6 forms. All of Sanatana Dharma will fit into this. You say, I'm a Shakta. You can be a Saraswati Upasaka, you will be a Shakta. You can be a worshipper of Kali, you will be a Shakta. You can be a worshipper of Lakshmi or any of the multiple forms, you will be there. You say, I'm an Upasaka of Krishna, Rama, Narasimha, Vamana, Hayagriva, whoever it is, you are a Vaishnava, right? Ultimately, what all these 6 are still complete and manifestations of that formless. So, this idea of Parabrahma is the source of it all. The source beyond which nothing exists and from whom everything exists. Essentially, if I had to sum it up, it would be that. Like you said, the endeavor of life is to be able to experience all of this, but find that creator not outside this universe, but within this creation. And that's where life integrates itself. And that is an aspect somewhere in the last few generations where existence has largely become in India about, understandably also, has become about survival. Because post-independence, a lot of people had to focus on that somewhere spiritual journeys and growth took a backseat. And that is why people gravitated towards spirituality only post-retirement, because they had families to feed. And today you and I are able to sit here talking about this because our ancestors did so much work, not only spiritually, but also materially, so that we don't have to worry about, we're privileged enough not to worry about existence.
Or probably it was our souls doing the work to earn this lifetime.
Possibly.
Coming back.
Yeah. And that is why the sooner you integrate spirituality into your life, it will not become something that will only become good intellectual reading post-retirement. It will actually see you through the hardest times of your lives. That is exactly why, when did he deliver Bhagavad Gita? Not after Arjuna finished the war and he was sleeping in the palace. He delivered it to him in the biggest crisis of his life and he said, now. Now is when you need to be able to operate from this place of deep surrender. So, spirituality is calling out to our generation and the younger generation saying, build it into your practice. Go through life. This school of thought or Sanatana Dharma is not saying abandon everything from day one, from the day you're born and just, renounce it all. Go through it. But like you said, go through it and eventually realize, oh, there is some cyclic stuff going on here. I don't want to be caught in this cycle. If I want an exit route from this highway, where do I exit? If I want to be here and I want to do well, that is also perfectly acceptable. What can enable and enhance that experience for me? In both cases, you will tap into the same energies. The same Ganapati will bless you with what you need here. And the same Ganapati will pull you out with his trunk and say, okay, you're done here. No, come, I'll take you into that realm. What you are asking for and what is your readiness. Both these things are assessed on a realm that we'll probably never have access to. And then based on that, we are responded to. So irrespective of what you want something here or beyond. That is why Ganapatya Upasana in particular has that ability. Every Devata has that ability, no doubt about it. But when you get deep into one, you will see it happening for yourself. And that is why Ganapati in particular I said, because Ganapati has this beautiful name of Vighna Harta, right? The one who removes obstacles. That concept of removing obstacles is not only acknowledging, like we said, that there may be so many unforeseen things that can come up, but also acknowledges a deeper aspect, which is also in some senses tantric in the understanding of what is the biggest obstacle. What is preventing me in this moment from being an enlightened being? What is preventing me from realizing my highest potential? Time. Time is blocking me from experiencing everything that I've not yet experienced. Otherwise, all experiences in 1 second should be downloaded into this human body, and I should be a self-realized being, and I should be free. But step by step, second by second, microsecond by second, something is stopping me. That something is being ruled by a force that is literally opening and closing every door of every experience, saying, yeah, for you, this is the next experience. Yeah, for you, this experience I'm not going to give you. For you, this is how I'm chartering it. That force, that time is an obstacle, is where the concept of Vighna comes in. Who handles that? Who is responsible for that? That is Vighna Raja. Ganapati is not only Vighna Harta. As much as he is called Vighna Harta, he is also called Vighna Karta. He also creates obstacles where they are necessary. And that aspect, that he is the ruler of time, when you bow down to him like that, your expression will change. That, okay, I'm worshipping the one who is responsible for all the times in my life that are about to come. So it'll automatically shift your perspective on him.
Are you a tantric?
So Tantra, to the best of my understanding, means technical methodology. It means a methodology to worship a certain devata. All of what we follow is Tantra. Within Tantra, within the school of Tantra, which is a separate methodology, there are different ways to worship, but essentially what all of us are doing somewhere is following Tantra only. So by that school, yes. Do I have a solid and a concrete understanding of the systems of Tantra in itself? No. My gaze, though, it comes from a very fascinated space where I can see Tantra integrate with yoga, integrate with bhakti, integrate with jnana, integrate with upasana, and literally like a ball is made out of all this and given to us in the form of a ritual, given to us in the form of a story. And rishis have said, here, just eat this one little ball of rice, you're good for life. It's your protein bar, but it's so much more than protein alone. So yeah.
You get why I asked you that question, right?
Yeah.
The audiences, generally speaking in India, I don't think this podcast's audience, because there's been a lot of Tantra-based episodes, but generally speaking, the audiences have a negative connotation when it comes to the word Tantric or Tantra. I always have to give this kind of an explanation when I am speaking about Tantra to someone off camera as well. And I think that's going to change through people like yourself, who are so family friendly. Mr. Varanasi, people see you saying, yes, I'm a Tantric, with that face and this aura that you have. That's when people understand that, yes, Tantra's got a sattvic side to it as well.
Absolutely. In fact, Tantra, like I said, means technical, right? In Karnataka, in Kannada, engineering colleges are called Tantrika Vidyalayas. Now, all these people who have so much fear around it, in Tantrika Vidyalayas, they're not teaching you something about bones and skulls and ashes. They're teaching you a technical methodology system, which is what we are calling as modern engineering with all its branches. So Tantra literally just means technical process. Even your cooking food is also Tantra only. Because you cannot say, first I'll heat it and then later I'll do this. There's a process to your cooking, right? You cannot change that process. So that wisdom that is present in everything, beginning from its base level operation to its highest expression, that process is called Tantra. And I think we need to be able to recognize the power of Tantra and also not be in a state of fear around it. Because Tantra, when you look at the tantric schools, there are methodologies to get into that kind of worship, tantric worship, and there are experts here like Rajarshi Anna and others who have spoken about it in great detail. That may or may not be for everybody and definitely is not advised without supervision. In fact, in Sanatan Dharma, most of these processes which require complexity in a certain degree are always under parental care, and parent is substituted with guru. That's all the differences. Guru is also a parent only. Under the guru's watchful eye, you do sadhana. What about those who don't have a guru? What about those who want to do sadhana? There are equally powerful, potent practices which do not run you the risk of energy imbalances, which you can do. And that is where the concept of festivals came in from. So the same Ganesh Chaturthi, somebody who is uninitiated into any occult practice can do with the same love, with the same intensity of love, and just do the puja that has to be done. And for someone who is deeply immersed in their own practice, they can also do the same thing. Both people will get the results. Not that some one person is denied. We have somewhere believed and we have bifurcated everything to think that, okay, only if you do it this occult way does it work. But look at the story. Parvati made him from her body and she fashioned life into him. That's what we have the ability to do. We have the ability to create life from life. And the second we go back to the basics, saying divinity is not about finding it outside, it's about finding it right here, we'll realize, oh, this is for everyone. This is not only for some people who know it all. No. Then they would have said Ganesh Chaturthi is only to be done by those initiated into this order and who have passed all these exams. They didn't say that. They said everybody across all divisions, no divisions whatsoever, should and can use this day. How you use it is left to you.
From a Sanatani perspective, what is the occult?
The occult is about something that is beyond the reach of the senses, but can be vaguely perceived by the senses, and the occult can be channelized. The divine can be channelized in a certain method, in a certain methodology. It's much like electricity, right? It's much like knowing that if you need electricity to flow through that plug point, you need to have the right kind of wires. Only copper will work. You cannot say, I'll use, say, a wire made of anything else. It'll burn plastic. It'll melt plastic. Electricity, for electricity to flow, you need to build that right wire. You need to get that right wire. Occult practices are about figuring out, so what's the material that has to go into that wire? That's essentially what occult practices are. Now, knowingly or unknowingly, we're all doing occult practices. Even if we don't know it, we are strengthening layers within the body, within the Atma. We are doing constant sadhana. Simple sadhanas have the same power as occult practices. But it's not that either one is favored or preferred. If your intellect and your genetic makeup and your karmic makeup is encouraging you to go straight with razor sharp intellect and break down a subject and say, okay, this is the methodology that I must use to worship Bhairava, so be it. Then the right guru for you will appear and will guide you. That guru need not come in physical form alone, but that's a different discussion. You will be guided in that path. If you feel, no, I just want to take clay, make Ganapati out of it with hands, ears, and just worship him with love, then that path will do the same wonders for you. So there's no concept of results only being received by one party. Everybody will get it. And everything is occult because knowingly or unknowingly, the second you dedicate yourself to something, the process will start to emerge by itself. The occult is observing that process, saying, oh, how is this happening? I didn't know this was happening. I didn't know that this is possible. You do any sadhana for a prolonged period of time, you will see, believe me or not, that if you are making a mistake in your sadhana, it will get corrected by itself. You may not have initially realized it. Let's say you're doing step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you've mixed up 2 and 3. There's a certain process. The divine will guide you and fix that error for you and say, yeah, your intent is sincere, but despite that something is slightly mismatched, don't worry, I'll come and change that. That is when you know the occult is working. That it is the invisible force beyond the visible effort. That is basically a one sentence definition I would say to occult.
I remember telling you this right before we began shooting today. A week before a very torrential chapter began in my life, I began Ganpati Sadhana.
Yeah. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that here.
Yeah. I'd only say that once the chaos began, my bhakti for Ganpati increased. Because in my head, I was like, okay, everything that's happening here, there's definitely some role of Ganpati to play in this chaos as well.
Yeah.
Cut to 6 months hence. One of my artistic content angles is that we're not going to be addressing the darker side of occult much more on this show, which disappoints a lot of the listeners on many levels. But I genuinely believe that the prior 3 years of talking about so much about the dark
extensively,
side, it tired out my physical body, it tired out my artistic body, and I think it kind of put some nazar on me, man, on some level. And that's the price I paid, I think. One of the angles for sure. Yet here we are doing this Ganpati episode and the occult is back. I still believe it's one of those subjects that needs to be understood, but perhaps from a distance.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's come up in the Ganpati episode?
So I think the fact that, firstly, for you personally, because you know what it is to be with Ganapati and to be held by Ganapati when you are going through all that tumultuous phase, right? It's not. See, one thing about worship is doing it when everything is hunky dory. तब तो बड़ा मजा आता है. You know, it's just, oh, चलो इनके घर जाते हैं पूजा के लिए, वहाँ पे प्रसाद खा के आ जाते हैं. That's a very different phase of life. But like Arjuna, when you are in the battlefield and everything is going haywire and you feel like, the carpet is being pulled from under your feet, which is what you would have seen through those few months. At that time, to have sadhana back you up is an unmatched feeling.
It literally felt like my home and everything in it is burning down in front of me. And yet I had to just stay still. Because
Right.
everyone around me is also not still.
Yeah.
Loved ones, etc. And this is where the sadhana felt like medicine. But imagine the sweetest, tastiest medicine in the world. That's what sadhana felt like. So I almost want to say that I enjoyed sadhana during this phase.
Sure.
But I don't know if you can call it enjoyment. But I at least understood this newer version of sadhana.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So all that excess anxiety, doubt, question, all that was poured into bhakti. Because what else can you do?
Yeah.
And every puja began with a Ganpati sadhana.
And that's when it becomes real, right? It becomes real when you sit with it and not sit away from the storm. Because in the eye of the storm, the way divinity reveals itself is with its fullest expression. Otherwise, it is gentle. It can be gentle. Some people on this earth who have walked here have been so blessed that they have seen the fullest expression of divinity, not necessarily going through certain levels of trials or tribulation. Some are like that. Some have seen divinity through that. And going through difficulties with sadhana and with sadhana intact is itself a blessing. Because the first thing to drop when we are going through any difficulty is our sadhana. Oh no, I'm going through a very difficult period. कहाँ यार टाइम ही नहीं मिलता जाप करने को. That's the first reaction. मन ही नहीं है यार. What do you do when मन ही नहीं है? Business is going on. Because this is not a hunky dory time, right? Everything is topsy turvy inside out. But still, if you hold on, he will get you to the other side. That's the whole idea. If you see Ganapati's worship, no, and you see some beautiful stories, there are stories of how he uses his trunk to lift up people. And that's what he does for people in difficulties. His name is enough to do that. His name is enough to pick up someone when they are almost sinking and say, no, you're not sinking. I'm here. What you did for me then, I will remember that and I will show up. So in that sense, there's no one who pays attention to our love more than God. And if you stick with him during the tough times, then there's absolutely no reason that he'll desert you. So in context of what we're discussing, right, about feeling it at one of the most challenging times in your own life, the fact that you sat through with it will change not only the way you see Ganapati, but will change the way that you see Ganapati within. Because where did that force manifest from? It's not that we somewhere have this tendency, that we like to romanticize spirituality. I was going through a very hard day. Tab pata nahi, somebody just came and gave me this beautiful silver idol, and from that day things got better. Yeah, but you know what? For 99,000 of us out of 1 lakh, that doesn't happen. We're not getting those magical, grand, cinematic experiences. We're getting it in the form of subtle reminders saying, hey, I'm here. And when you hear that, you hear it exactly when you did what you said. You have to say, stay still. Because if everything is moving and you're also moving, you'll miss the signs. The signs would have come in so many ways. And the fact that something which has been keen in your own artistic exploration, which is the exploration of Tantra, is coming back. It's coming back after you sat with Ganapati through a difficult phase. And it's coming back in a conversation that you're having about Ganapati is enough testimony to say that he's aware of what your heart wants. So maybe it may not come out in the podcast. Maybe it won't come out in external expression with the world. But you will still find your way around that space and navigate through it if that's what you want. Because Ganapati has that amazing ability that he recognizes what the heart wants and he'll move you in that direction. There is not a single devotee of Ganesha who he has ever abandoned, number one, nor is there a single case of a devotee who has not received what they wanted. There is a beautiful, and we are in Maharashtra, so I can't not talk about this, a devotee of Ganesha by name Moria Gosavi. Maurya Gosavi devoted his life to Ganesha. And his story is very elaborate and I won't go too much into it, but there's a point comes when Ganesha says, I'm so moved by you that I will be born in your house for 7 generations. And if you go to the Samadhi of Maurya Gosavi and his descendants, his son, Chintamani, I think his name is, if I'm not mistaken, Chintamani's Samadhi is there, the place where Chintamani was buried. On top of that Samadhi, there are other generations, Chintamani's son and son and son, 7 generations it spans. All of them just have regular Samadhis. Ganapati's energy is supposed to have been contained in them. But in Chintamani's case, on top of the Samadhi, a rock has formed. That rock is in the shape of Ganesha. You can see it when you go there to his Samadhi, which is very close to Pune. This is testimony to the fact that what you do out of love, out of reverence, out of gratitude and Sharanagati is never forgotten. God manifesting himself to someone and saying, I will come as your child, and showing it to the rest of the world when that child supposedly passes away, because passes away is really a wrong word to use. But that's the idea of Upasana. That Upasana will leave a stamp for you and the whole world to see, saying, hey, you all raised eyebrows, you all questioned, you all wondered, ye thoda pagal hai kya? Which is a question that we ask about spiritual people all the time. That the world thinks they're so crazy only. But divinity will show them when divinity has to show them. Divinity is not concerning itself with how much is the world validating it. It's showing the seeker, if the seeker is willing to listen. So Ganapati does that. He has big ears, he's always listening. So
yeah, they say if you believe long and faithfully enough, then God will build you back up in front of the people he broke you down in front of.
Yeah. And in many ways, that's also what karma is, right? That when we go through the process of karmic cleansing, like we were talking about earlier, when we go through that karmic breakdown, we are brought down to our most base state. From there, we are remade, right? The glass cannot be filled with a new experience until it is emptied. That emptying is also divine. It is all, one may argue and say it is always easy to romanticize this in hindsight, especially from the seat that I'm on, because any individual alone knows their experience. But that statement is only half complete. That individual and the Devata that they have been worshipping and holding on to, both of them know that experience. So we are never alone in that sense. Provided terms and conditions apply that we hold on to the sadhana before, during and after that period. That's when you know, okay, no, I was not alone. I see the hand of God in all these activities. That's where the magic begins, because you connect the dots and suddenly a rangoli is formed. So, yeah.
Even those plants behind you are reminding me of the Durvas.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Like there's so much real energy in this particular episode.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know even you're feeling it.
Totally.
And I'm sure anyone who's with us till this point is feeling
I'm
it.
looking at it. I'm seeing it behind you. And it doesn't happen often, because that's the thing about Ganapati, no? He's so sudden. He just appears like that. There are so many beautiful stories of how he's come like that. And it's not just about stories contained in Puranas. It's also about the live experiences of people. In fact, when you start to worship Ganapati, more and more, the first thing that you notice is, and this comes up in sadhana, is the kind of obstacles that one didn't expect suddenly show up. But the first question of a rational mind is, but मैं तो गणपति की पूजा कर रहा हूँ यार. I'm worshipping Ganapati. Why is this happening to me? But it's just like what happened when the ocean was churned, right? There's a beautiful Puranic story of how the Devatas and the Asuras, two opposing forces in nature, they came together to churn the ocean because they wanted Amrit, which was at the base of the ocean. The first thing that came up was poison. That's natural, because when the churn is happening inside, when we are holding on to any Devata, the first thing that emerges is that blocking layer between us and that Devata. If you go past that, no, you'll go into a different realm. And Ganapati is about that different realm. He necessarily puts people through that. But if you're sincere enough, you'll get to a realm of pure joy. So every Devata is associated with one energy. Not to say that they don't have other energies. They're complete manifestations of all energies. But they show you the highest expression of one particular one. So for example, Rudra is the energy of Agni. Devi is the energy of Jala. Vishnu is also connected to Jala, water, the energy of water. Ganapati is about the energy of joy, of Ananda. That is why everything about him is joy. Every Devata has a realm that they reside in. Vishnu's realm is Vaikuntha. Shiva's realm is Kailasa. Devi's realm is Manidvipa. Krishna's realm is Goloka. Ganapati's realm is called Swananda. Swa Ananda, made of two words. Swa is self. Ananda is joy. He who delights in the self. That being is Ganapati. That is why when you're worshipping him, Ganapati and Krishna, they bring Ananda automatically. Hanuman and Ganapati have so much in common because they're basically about joy. See what happens in Ramayana, in the story of Ramayana, when Sita is abducted by Ravana, Rama goes looking for someone who can help and he meets Sugriva. The second Hanuman enters the story, everybody, the Ramayana literally sits up because now there's joy. That is why we, in worship, in the school of Sanatan Dharma, in multiple schools, we have this concept of Paraspara Bhava. Paraspara Bhava means seeing two deities in similar light. Ganapati and Hanuman are identical like that.
Wow.
They both bring joy, number one. There is a secret of Upasana hidden here. We worship Ganapati at the beginning of a task so that there are no obstacles. You worship Anjaneya or Hanuman at the end of a task for Karya Siddhi, to attain the fruit of what you worship. One is at the beginning, one is at the end. In the south, Sankashtahara Chaturthi, even in Maharashtra, it's followed very religiously, very sincerely. And Hanuman is called as Sankat Mochan. So it's the same thing. You see across the northern parts of the country, Hanuman and Ganesha's idols both will be smeared with sindoor. Same idea. Both of them are worshipped on Tuesdays. Both of them are representing two energies of Shiva. That is why in Chennai, there's a very beautiful temple where there is a Vigraham of Hanuman and Ganapati merged with each other called as Adyanta Prabhu. Adi is Ganapati. We worship him in the beginning. Anta is Hanuman. So when you worship both of these, irrespective of whether you worship them together or individually, when you are worshipping one, that element of joy will seek to you. Essentially, what are these devatas? These devatas are those energies and those emotions in their highest expression. When you set a wire of connection between yourself and them, that will flow towards you. So you will see that energy entering into you. So Ganapati's joy, Krishna's joy, Hanuman's joy, all of them will come towards you when you are keenly observing what's happening within. And in Ganesh Chaturthi, that's the community feeling also. That's the reason they said community worship. Because with community worship, what happens is it's a collective celebration. So automatically a sense of togetherness, a sense of brotherhood, call it what you will, that comes. These are all ways to internalize that joy. Ganapati is entirely about joy. Worshipping him will take you to a state of joy after pulling you through the dross of everything that's not joyful. In summary of what we've been talking about. So, yeah.
Do you feel the entry of Kartikeya in the episode now?
I always feel the entry of Kartikeya when we're talking about Ganapati.
It's the responsibility of TRS to at least take Murugan's information to the rest of India. I do believe it's concentrated in the southern part of our country at this point in the timeline of Sanatan Dharma.
Beautiful.
Therefore, let's discuss their relationship also. For every Sanatani listening to this. And it is so important for every Sanatani to at least know Murugan from a different perspective than the basic story that one hears in North India, which is the story of the going around the earth.
Chalo, we'll talk about that story also.
Yeah, and I've heard a very different version of the story from my dear Tamil friend Shruti Hasan, who gave me a beautiful version of that story from Kartikeya's perspective. But over to you, Mr. Varanasi.
Sure. So I'm just looking at this beautiful photo because I said earlier we'll look at it, right? So if you look at the stories of Ganesha and Kartikeya's, I won't say birth, let's call it appearance, because these are appearances of divinity that was otherwise formless. Now, in the case of Ganesha, it's predominantly made by Parvati. Shiva attaches the head later. So predominantly you can say he's Gauri's putra. If you see the story of Kartikeya's birth, which demands an entire episode in itself, he's predominantly made through Shiva. Devi comes in at a later stage into the story and then she takes care of him. So most of the time you will see that Ganesha is actually held closer to Shiva and Devi holds Kartikeya. The logic from a very beautiful familial point of view is that because it's Shakti's creation and he loves his wife deeply, Since Ganesha is her creation, Shiva holds him close. And since Kartikeya is his creation, she holds Kartikeya close. That's the typical family photo that you see of four of them. But the connection between Ganesha and Kartikeya, like you said, most people restrict and we compartmentalize gods. And this is our biggest undoing, because we treat gods as if they are some different specialists in a hospital where we have to go at some point to the eye doctor, the kidney doctor, the heart doctor. We're missing the point. These are all units within the same body. So we have somewhere said, oh, Ganesha is the god of intellect, of buddhi, and Kartikeya is the god of war. Kartikeya is the god of wisdom. But then comes that most popular story we know, that one day Narada comes to Kailasa and he says, here is a fruit. I have only one. Which of your two sons is going to get this fruit? So immediately Shiva announces a competition that whoever goes around the world first will receive the fruit. So Kartikeya leaves on his peacock. And he's completed 2 rounds and he has to complete the 3rd round. And at that time, his parents are telling Ganesha, hey, you have not done this at all. And Ganesha just gets up, he goes thrice around his parents. And Kartikeya comes back from his 3rd round around the whole universe by then. And they're waiting to see who is going to be declared the winner. And Shiva says it's going to be Ganesha. Now, the story is Kartikeya gets upset and he comes away to the southern part of the country. He comes to a place called Palani in Tamil Nadu. And he sulks over there. This is the story. But what we need to understand here is, and because people tend to say, oh, Ganesha was so intelligent that he went around his parents who are equivalent to the universe. Kartikeya was not any less intelligent at all. It's a very beautiful story because it's talking about 2 ways of looking at this world. Kartikeya saw his parents in the whole universe. That's why he went around the universe. Ganesha saw the whole universe in his parents. It's just 2 flip sides of a coin. These 2 are not opposing energies in nature. They are just supportive energies that are showing you together a wholesome way of looking at it. See the divinity in all creation. That's what Kartikeya did. See all creation in divinity. That's what Ganesha did. To be able to establish that link, we have to then recognize Kartikeya himself is considered as the ruling god of wisdom. He is called as Guru Guha. He is a guru in himself. And there are so many people who are... Ramana Maharishi, the phenomenal saint of Arunachalam, of Tiruvannamalai, he is considered an incarnation of Kartikeya. Kartikeya is not just the god of war. Kartikeya is that force that shows us how to accumulate and to congregate the divine forces within us, and he becomes the commander-in-chief for them. Because these divine forces within the body will also need to fight wars, be it on a daily basis, when diseases are being expelled from the body 24/7, or on a larger life basis, when crises show up. So Kartikeya is a phenomenal force. And like you said, Kartikeya's worship is, I won't say restricted to the south, but now the interesting thing, we were talking about Shanmatas, no? Each of these Shanmatas, the 6 schools, that is Vaishnavam, Shaivam, Shaktam, Ganapatyam, Skandam and Sauram, each of them grew in different parts of the country. Vaishnavam, Shaivam and Shaktam, that is Vishnu, Shakti and Shiva, you can see throughout the breadth, both south, north, east, west, in different ways. So the east worships Devi very differently than the south does, for example. But Devi worship is there in both. Same thing with Shiva, same thing with Vishnu. But there are points of origin where you can see very, very clearly where did these schools of worship begin? Where did these forms of divinity manifest? And I've said this earlier as well, that when it comes to Ganapati, there is no question that that force manifested in Maharashtra. That is what makes Ganapati the heartbeat of this entire state. Because the most powerful Ganapati Kshetra is Morgaon, which is very close to Pune. That is where he appeared for the very first time on a peacock, earning him the name Mayureshwar. Now, there's a story of how that came, but it is said after he kills a Rakshasa, he gives the peacock to his brother. And that is why Muruga is always actually on a peacock. And Ganapati doesn't keep that Vahana anymore for himself, that vehicle. He hands it over to his brother. Now, so Ganapati Aradhana stemmed from Maharashtra. Absolutely no doubt about it. And that is why if you see even some of the textual treatises that we have on Ganesha, namely the Mudgala Purana. Mudgala Purana is a phenomenal piece of work that actually went beyond finding. It was untraceable for so long, until a rishi by name Mudgala himself, he was so keen on receiving this that one day in Morgaon, some old man on the day of Chaturthi came and handed him a book And when he was looking at what it was, he realized it was Mudgala Puranam. And Mudgala Puranam is one of the it's a book that completely summarizes how to worship Ganapati and what are the benefits of worshipping Ganapati. Ganesha Mahapuranam. This talks about not just Morgaon, but 8 phenomenally powerful places of Ganesha in Maharashtra. It's not that Ganesha temples aren't elsewhere, but the heartbeat is here. So it spreads to other places. Muruga, the heartbeat is in Tamil Nadu. The way he was seen and worshipped and experienced over there are so many powerful temples of his over there. Again, Ganesha's number is 4, Muruga's number is 6. So there are 6 temples of him in Tamil Nadu. One is the place that he came away from Kailasa when he came to Salk. Again, Salk is a very poor word, but when he came here, in fact, the story goes that he came off to the south, just to complete that story. So from a standpoint of tattva, of philosophy, yes, it is Ganesha and Kartikeya being just looking at God and the universe in different ways. But from the standpoint of a story, it takes quite a cute family turn where he comes all the way to the south and his parents miss him. So they come down, all the way down to console him. And he is on a hill. He's sitting on a hill at that time. And he's very unhappy. So when Shiva and Parvati come, he meets them and he says, why did I not get the fruit? Was I any less knowledgeable than my brother? And his father, Shiva, responds saying, what fruit can I give you? You yourself are the fruit. So this in Tamil becomes, fruit is palam. In Sanskritam it is phalam. So in Tamil it becomes palam. So he says, palam niye appa, you yourself are the fruit of knowledge. What fruit can I give you? So palam niye appa becomes palani. So this is the place where father and son had a, I would say negotiation, but a beautiful conversation in which Shiva said, you are the ultimate expression of divinity. What fruit can I give you? Of course, Kartikeya doesn't agree. So he says, I won't come back with you to the north. And that's why he stays back here. And Shiva and Parvati don't want to stay away from him. So they move slightly further down south to a place called Sri Shailam. Sri Shailam is a phenomenal place of Shiva Radhana. This is where some occult beings still reside, sitting in deep, hidden in the caves of that entire mountain range. That is where Shiva resides as Mallikarjuna. There's a famous story in the Mahabharata of how Arjuna came and worshipped Shiva. One version says it happened there, that he went there seeking his grace for the Pashupatastra. Phenomenal place. But the reason for that kshetra to come up, Kartikeya coming to the south. So Kartikeya's coming to the south ends up being the reason that we have a beautiful treatise that talks about Kashi. Because when Skanda or Kartikeya is sitting here in the south, he decides, I'm not going back over there. One rishi comes by name Agastya. When Agastya comes and meets Kartikeya, Kartikeya sits and talks to him about the greatness of Kashi. That entire thing is called the Kashi Khanda. That Kashi Khanda, Ranveer, it's so precise. It will tell you at which longitude, which latitude, which Devata's Vigraham is present in Kashi. He talks about it in great detail. He talks about the 56 Ganeshas that are there in Kashi. So the reason that we know about Kashi is Skanda. The reason that Kashi Kshetram, which is one of the most phenomenal kshetras in this universe, the Moola Karana for that, Kartikeya. So we have him to thank for so many things, even if we don't know about him. And it's not that his worship is not there. Even in East India, during Durga Puja, you will see Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati, Ganesha and Kartikeya. And there are stories, there are folk stories of their own, but the worship in some ways got contained here. It moved from Tamil Nadu to Karnataka and Andhra. There Kartikeya is worshipped as a serpent. So now that's where the yoga begins. The entire family of Shiva is basically just about yogic balance. And firstly you'll see this even in the iconography. This is present so beautifully. Look at the vehicles of the different gods there. Shiva has a bull. Devi has a lion. Prey, predator. Muruga has a peacock. Ganesha has a snake around his waist. Shiva also has a snake. Again, predator, prey, peacock, snake. This snake is here. Ganesha's vehicle is a rat. Snake, rat, predator, prey. 3 sets of predator, prey, but nobody's moving in that family photo. They're all so comfortably sitting and it's not bothering anybody. So there is some balance that's being maintained over there. The entire idea that Shiva's son, one of them, is somebody with a strong trunk who can pull you up. The other is a slithering serpent. It's about yogic awakening. From the Mooladhara chakra, which is Ganapati, reaching till here, which is the Agnya chakra. From there, divinity will pick you up. In the body, this place is called Mahakailasa. The residence of Shiva and Shakti is here. And if you see the birth of Kartikeya, the story is very elaborate, so I'm not going into it. Shiva and Shakti come down from Kailasa to come and pick him up because he grows elsewhere. That is about a seeker who has reached till this point. And from here, divinity alone can pick you up. You cannot reach there by your own. Only divinity has to come and pick you up. Literally, Shiva and Shakti do that. It's just about what's happening here. But it's fascinating. Or rather, that's what makes it fascinating.
I'm a little blanked out. The thing is, this is a Ganesh Chaturthi festival.
Yeah.
And we have mentioned Kartikeya.
Yes.
But just as an ode to Ganesh. Because the episode is truly dedicated to him, and we will make a detailed episode on Murugan at some point.
Sure.
I would love for you to end the episode in any way that you think is right.
Sure. So I think I'll just use this to talk about, I don't want to go too much into too many stories because the point is to stay with what's coming and not use this as an information database. Even for the people who are watching, my hope is that we are seeing this as an entry point into the world of engaging with Ganesha. And how do you do that? Because this time, right, leading to Ganesh Chaturthi, from Ganesh Chaturthi, most people are familiar with the concept of Ganapati Navaratri, particularly starting with the day of Ganesh Chaturthi till Ananta Chaturdashi. That's 9 nights, 10 days. That's the time a lot of people keep Ganesha for 1 day, 3 days, 5 days, and so on. But even this time leading to Ganesh Chaturthi is powerful. So, like I was mentioning earlier, right, there are multiple stories of how Ganesha came to be. Why? Because they're talking about how within us, that divinity is waiting to come out, provided we use the one thing that we have, or the two things we have. One is we have time, second is heart. So, how is it that Gauri and Shiva did the same thing? Parvati and Shiva did exactly the same thing. They themselves are the parents of the universe. But to set an example, they say, hey, this primordial sound from where this universe has stemmed, we want this to be born as our child. So for this, Parvati undertakes a vratam. This vratam is called as Varada Vratam. And on the day of Chaturthi in the month of Shravan, she begins this vratam. For 30 days, she does puja to Ganapati, to Omkara, to that primordial sound, which belongs to no language, which belongs to nothing, but everything belongs to it. That's like Ganapati. And at the end of 30 days, on the day of Bhadrapada Shuddha Chaturthi, that Omkara manifests as her son. This is another story. This is not the conventional one. The conventional one says, no, he was not born from her womb. No, there are other stories. One of his names is Gauri Garbha Samudbhavaha. That is why in Karnataka and also in Maharashtra, you have the practice of worshipping Gauri leading to Ganesha. In Karnataka, the day before Ganesh Chaturthi is celebrated, it is Gauri Puja. So we say Gauri Ganesha Habba together. In Maharashtra, it comes a few days later as Jeshtha Gauri. 4 days after Ganesha is worshipped, Gauri is invited and together both of them go back to Kailasa. So the stories around them are very touching. That in Karnataka, they say that actually it used to be Gauri's festival. And then because she came down all the way to her father's house. So when Gauri is worshipped in Karnataka, it is, and even in Maharashtra, it is as if a daughter is coming back to her house, to her maternal home. So then when Gauri was away for many days, Shiva said, hey, go and bring your mother back. So Ganesha becomes the Uber to take his mother back. And that's why we worship both of them together and send them back together as well. So it's so beautiful. Even when you immerse them, you will see in those parts of the country, they don't just immerse the idol. They'll tie a little bit of rice, of puffed rice into a cloth and immerse it with it, saying this is for the journey back home. So it's very endearing elements like this. That's what makes deities personal. And I mentioned this other story of Varada Chaturthi to talk about the idea that this is all it takes. It takes time. And time doesn't have to be an endless wait, because one is doing sadhana with the objective of a goal. But if you do sadhana without a goal, it actually benefits the seeker more. Because when a goal is there in sight, all that sadhana, one, will go and credit itself to your account. Number one. Number two, at that time, you may or may not be in a position to do sadhana. Some people are blessed that even during difficult times, like you were mentioning, even when you're going through a difficult time, just before that you began your sadhana, so you were given the grace to hold on to it and not let go. But if a situation arises where you let go for whatever reason, all that you have done up till that point will not forsake you. And I think Ganesha is that reminder of it, because so much can be said about his stories, but ultimately he is the most compassionate one. Now, people will argue saying, what, when you spoke about Krishna last year on Janmashtami, you said Krishna is compassionate. We need to stop compartmentalizing them. If you really worship Ganapati with your heart, you'll find him in a Krishna temple. If you worship Krishna with your heart, you'll find him in a Shiva temple. We need to stop seeing them as compartments. Ganesh Chaturthi is a window that is being offered by the universe saying, take this, use it for your betterment. Magical things will happen. Do it in the truest form of commitment. Be true to your sadhana, be true to the environment. Be as loving as possible to everything around you, and know that Ganesha stems from love and from joy. I think that's the last thing and the only thing, the most important thing to be said in this entire context.
Of course, it's been a Ganesh Chaturthi special, but truly you've explained Sanatan Dharma through this episode. So there's only one man in the country who can do that in my eyes.
But it is so joyous to be sitting here and having this conversation with you, because one thing I think I've noticed about you in the last few conversations that we've had is it's not curiosity alone that drives you. It comes from such a space of engagement that is what prompts so much that comes out of you, because so many of the questions that you had asked were things loosely in my head saying, we should talk about this, but we didn't talk about it. And suddenly it comes out through you as a question. So that's testimony to the hand that holds us all. So thank you for making Ganapati manifest here.
Pleasure as always to just spend time with you. And podcast is a bonus. Also, very few people I have this much jugalbandi with, this much chemistry conversationally. And then there's always the role of providence. Like you were supposed to actually go to Siddhivinayak today.
Yes.
And it's pouring outside.
Yeah.
Mumbai is flooded beyond measure.
Yeah.
And we're forced to be in the studio and ensure that we record these podcasts very, very well for the audience.
And 2 podcasts around one Devata in 2 languages.
Yeah.
It's testimony to how much. And I don't think I've even scratched the surface.
Yeah, and wholly different content.
Wholly different contents. Yeah, so if you're watching this one, go watch the Hindi one, because I think maybe 2 sentences overlap. I don't even know apart from that what is the same. That's the ocean that's Ganesha.
This is when you know that the divine has been a part of the art.
Really, really, entirely. So thank you
Mr.
for that.
Varanasi. Thank you so much.